basically, it's a piece. If you buy it, my career is over. So 20 plus years of work, of networking, exhibiting all over the world, even in space, all that, it's finished.
Jean is a multidisciplinary crypto artist whose work blends surrealism, symbolism, and digital experimentation to explore the mythologies of the blockchain age. In this episode, Jean shares his journey from early creative explorations to the evolving world of crypto art and reflects on how lucid dreams, metaphysics, and digital culture shape his creative practice. We talk about the cult of crypto art, the rise of blockchain mythology, and what it means to build culture through code, community, and storytelling. Let's dive into this conversation.
Okay, Jean. So thank you so much for joining us today. What can you tell me about what crypto art means to you?
I wanted to write a book or something like that about crypto art seen from the inside, from an artist's perspective. I think it's a very interesting question because if you ask anyone what it is, it's going to be very different. I think that's why you ask everyone that. And so there are two extreme definitions of it, right? One is it's art only about crypto and only minted as an NFT. And I think it's very reductive. And then there is the other definition that for me is way too vague and way too generous in a way. It's anything that is minted as an NFT. And it's also limited in a way because, for example, if you take Pascal Boyard, who has done some incredible street art pieces, that is definitely crypto art, even if it's not a token. There's lots of weird things around the blurry boundaries of it. So for me, it's something in the middle. It's something that can be an NFT, but it doesn't have to be. It's generally more something that has thematically or technically something to do with living in the blockchain zeitgeist, or more largely the digital zeitgeist. So, very digital aesthetics like pixel art, interactive stuff, glitchy stuff, obviously stuff that refers to crypto culture, to all that kind of stuff. Not all NFTs are crypto art, and not all crypto art is NFT.
I think that that's a wonderful definition. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a token for it to be crypto art. So thank you for that. Jean, you had your first solo show in 2011, way before, crypto art had even begun. How has your artistic practice evolved since then?
It was a very, very long time ago. I had just finished my second master's degree like 1 year before that. And at the time, I had already been like drawing and painting for a long time, but I was more into photography and photo montage and that kind of stuff. So this first exhibition was a mix of photos I had taken in Japan when I was living in Japan in 2008 for a year, and some photo manipulations, which were more like poetic ways, surrealistic ways of expressing myself. And that was cool. And at some point, I was just like, I'd rather be drawing and painting because it's so much more personal to me. So I completely abandoned photography and then came back fully on drawing and painting and then street art. And then because I was a musician and also did some graphic design and illustration on the side, the digital thing has always been part of my practice. Animation, VR paintings, using AR filters to put animation with music on prints, that kind of stuff. So that was how it gradually evolved. And I had a very important frustration building up through the years. It was that when I wanted to exhibit something digital, I always needed to have a physical thing to anchor it to the exhibition space, So at the time, you couldn't exhibit anything digital natively. It was just like, oh yeah, but it has to be a print and have an AR layer, or you have to 3D print whatever you're doing. So you need a physical incarnation for something that is purely digital, or you need a physical excuse, that's what I would call it, to exhibit it. And that was very frustrating for me. I was like, I don't know. Every time I was doing something digital, I loved it. And I was like, why is it so hard to, in a more art-focused space, to just have it part of the art world, So when I discovered NFT, it wasn't just like a new way to sell stuff. For me, it wasn't that. It was really like, I've been looking for that my whole life. It's there. It works. It's just normal to value animated GIF the same way you would value an oil painting and exhibit it the same way and collect it. And so that was like both a relief, maybe some anger at first, like, why haven't I heard about that before? It's just, I needed that. So, it felt like home right away. And although I didn't understand everything at first, I just jumped straight into it, and I never looked back.
And we're all happy for it. I just have a question, Jean. You said that you had to go back to painting and drawing because you were able to explore deeper parts of yourself. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So if you've seen my work before NFTs, it's very colorful, surreal. There's obviously lots of inspiration from people like Möbius or, like French old school sci-fi stuff, psychedelic stuff from the 60s, 70s. And it's less obvious, but 1/4 of my family is Catalan, and I've been born and raised with Salvador Dali and people like that. And so this whole surreal, dreamy vibe has been a big thing for me since forever. And I was trying to do that in photography, and you can edit it for hours and have something very creative. No question. If you're doing photography and photo montage for that kind of purpose, you're going to do more like collage or that kind of approach where you combine ingredients that are already made. But if you start drawing or painting, there's a blank canvas. I can do anything I want. It's like more freedom, basically.
Jean, I think this question leads in from the last one. You've studied art and written a thesis on Japanese contemporary artist Takashi Murakami. How does knowledge of traditional or contemporary art influence the works that you create?
So I studied art on my own. My major was actually applied foreign languages. So first master's degree was English and Japanese and business related stuff like economics. And the second master's degree was pure Japanese, more based on culture and language. That's when I went to Japan for a year. And so for my thesis, I was already doing art on the side for a long time. And I was like, obviously, I'm going to do something about art. And that's when it started to connect the two of them. And it was great. I had a really great time. I know lots of people, when they write their thesis, it's just like stress piled upon stress and taking a long time to, study, research, and all that. For me, it was just a joy. I was reading books all day about art, trying to make sense of it, connecting art to philosophy, history, different culture, how they interact, because it was mainly about Japanese contemporary art, but also through the lens of the US and Europe. So it was very much like looking at dialogues of art from an external point of view. And I really loved it. And at the end of it, so I had first class honors, everything, a very, very good reception and a very good mark and everything. And so I was like, okay, I can do a PhD and become this kind of researcher in anthropology, specialized in Japanese contemporary art. And it would have been a fantastic career. But then am I going to spend the rest of my life studying someone else's work, or am I going to finally quit university after 8 years and focus on doing my own art? And obviously I chose the latter, but I really loved it. And yeah, I think in some ways it informs what I do now, because I always think about what it means to be an artist, especially today, and how the universal and the very personal interact, that kind of stuff. So both the very small picture and the big picture. So yeah, that helps.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of this practice of your own. You've described your obsession as creating a synergy between concept and form. Could you walk us through how you approach balancing story and aesthetics in your work?
Yeah, so it's hard to describe because it really depends on the work. It's never happening the same way between two different works, but I'm going to try to explain it. For example, a conceptual piece called Attention, it's basically telling you how long you've been looking at a work of art for. So the concept is we're in a digital age where everyone is consuming art first on Twitter or any other social platform. And we have so little time for it. It's just like doom scrolling, and you have maybe a few seconds at best to enjoy art. And so if you're trying to make something deep, what is your viewer going to get out of it if they don't take the time and the chance to really dive into it? They can't. So it was a reaction against that. And it was reducing the value of art to not even to money or the name or the hype, but just to the time you're actually going to spend looking at it. I wanted it to be really aggressively minimal. And so the form, the aesthetics of this one is on purpose. There's nothing left. There is a nice minimalistic font I designed myself. The rest is just a bit of glitch, a bit of noise just to make it visually better. And that's it. In this case, is really the same as the concept. It's reducing the thing to just data, basically, with just a little bit of decor, but not that much. And on the opposite side, for example, the last piece I made available flat, with lots of eyes having very different emotions. This place is like the opposite. It's very maximalist because there's a lot going on. So this character goes through burnout and there's hope. There's the absolute lack of hope and touching rock bottom and being very sad about it or angry or feeling empty. And so you have all these eyes. They have very different emotions to them. And so this piece is complex in its emotional approach. And so there's a lot going on. There's a mix of hand-drawn, artificial intelligence, edited stuff, animated by hand, some kind of pixel art, I guess, motion design, I don't know, lots of stuff. It's exact opposite. And this diversity and richness in the form, in the aesthetics, is a mirror of this big confusion and superposition of a lot of different things going on. I really find it interesting to, if you want to get your point across or to express something, try to have both body and soul concept and whatever, like to be two facets of the same thing so much that they go in the same direction and inform each other.
That was a great example. I really like the term aggressive minimalism for retention work. This fits it quite well.
You draw on influences like lucid dreaming, synesthesia, and metaphysics. How do these inspirations show up in your creative process?
It's less the case now. The first time I had a lucid dream, I think I was still living in Paris. So I was like maybe 5, 6, something like that. It was very early on. And to me, at first, I think it was a way to cope. I didn't really enjoy my life at that time. And so going to bed and getting under the bed covers was like, now this is my space. The world is shit. I'm going to have a good night. And I just started to notice that if I was thinking about something I really liked while trying to go to sleep, I would dream about that. So it started like that. I was like, oh, I can, basically choose my dreams. And so then it gets stronger. And then at some point, when I was an adult, there was a phase where I was fully conscious about being asleep all the time. So you can do basically whatever you want, and your dreams become kind of laboratories to experiment stuff, to create stuff, to have fun. I don't know. Now it's less the case because I think at some point I got bored, because if you do that all the time, you've had all this freedom, and at some point you want less freedom because you want to find a balance between I'm able to do stuff that I want because I'm half conscious that I'm dreaming, but not completely. So I don't wake up. And so there's a kind of, I can follow the flow and have an adventure. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, right? It's like if you're the scenarist all the time, there's no surprise. But if you let go of the control, it's more interesting. So now it's less the case. And for synesthesia, since I was a kid, I would just put on some music and close my eyes, and then I would see like landscapes, half abstract landscapes just, floating by. And it's always been something natural for me. And so because I'm using sound design and music a lot in my work, it's this approach, like making sound and image go from the same source, informing each other. Yeah.
You have a powerful mind. I couldn't do any of those things that you have just described. At the best of times, I can't even remember my dreams, let alone, think about what they should look like. I don't know. You have a pretty great handle over your mind to be able to do that and go to those places.
Less now, but it's still there. I don't always remember my dreams. And when I was really, really a lot more music, I would compose in my dreams. So sometimes I would wake up and turn on my phone and be like, and try to note down the lines for every instrument to not forget it. And that was great. And one day I just reimagined something that was already existing, but I didn't notice until a few months later. I was like, oh, fuck, that was a bass line by Tool, I think. And of course it was amazing. And happened. But yeah, now it's not always the case. I don't always remember, and I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Yeah, see, plagiarizing in our dreams. That's a new one. You are a spokesperson for the cult of cryptoart. What is the cult, and what does it mean to be a part of this collective?
Spokesperson. I don't know what I am in it. It's a collective of artists and a few collectors and builders and whatnot. Basically have fun and making shit happen. I don't know how else to say it. It was created in 2021 by Xcopy, Eclectic Method, and Allotamony. And no one of them is still there today, but it grew and it became something like a big family of friends, I would say. So it's very much about making exhibition together, having projects and seeing each other at least once a year in Lisbon, but not just there, sometimes in other places. It's basically a collective of art, but very friendship based, more than anything else, I think. And it's very supportive. So when the bear market was hard, or, whenever something was wrong, you could always have friends to talk to and people to bounce ideas with. And it's a great help. And I think there's really like no other collective like that. And it's also become, I think, something like the punk garage go-to collective of crypto art, something like that. I don't know how it looks from the outside, but that's how I feel it's looked.
Scott and I have sometimes talked about that event that we attended this year in Lisbon and the feeling that the people that belong to the cult give us. And I'm a huge heavy metal fan, have always been. And people always, are, I don't know, worried about those who like heavy metal because they wear dark clothing, but they are all teddy bears, in my opinion. Like, for the most part, they're teddy bears. And, that would be my explanation for the members of the cult. All teddy bears that, are just wonderful. And like you said, it feels like family.
It makes sense. And you're totally right about metalheads because, Hellfest, it's like one of the biggest metal festivals in France. And everyone says that you go there, it's all like big, tall men with big beards and like spikes everywhere and, looking very, very much like they're going to kill you, but they're just going to hug you. And it's always like that. And I think I made the connection with, I think it was in Denmark, you had people with Down syndrome, I think. Some of them would have like kind of an angst and they would need something to soothe themselves and calm down to feel good again. And at some point, they discovered they would just blast like the loudest, most hardcore music they could, often like very noisy, brutal punk or metal. They would just, like headbang and go crazy a bit. And then they would feel like super good the rest of the time. And I think it's the same for visual art, that it's a bit textured, in some ways aggressive or fun or liberating in a way. Maybe the essence of rock and roll, I guess. There is this particularity, like people are afraid of it, but just being in connection with that, liberating by chaos, destruction, shaking things up to have a better view of it. And yeah, there's something about Cult of Crypto Art maybe in that department.
Jean, Cult of Crypto Art often plays with mythmaking and symbolism and kind of a digital mysticism. How do those ideas resonate with your own artistic philosophy?
It started as a joke, right? The collective. It was just the three people I mentioned earlier having fun doing what they called cult news. And they would just give like fake broadcasted news about NFT stuff happening, like the first auctions at Christie's, people trying to talk very badly about NFTs and blockchains on shows and stuff like that. And they would make ridiculous things out of it. And it was very fun, but it started as a joke because if you remember in 2021, we got so much shit from the outside world saying, oh, the blockchains are destroying the Amazon forest. It's a Ponzi. It's destroying the environment. It consumes so much energy. It's a scam, whatever. And at some point, people were just like, it's a cult. And I think that's when these three guys, they were like, okay, we're a cult. What are you going to say, right? And so they went on with it, and that's what started it. And and I think we just rolled on. I think I was one of the ones who was later trying to thread on that thing, because I find it extremely funny, especially because it's very welcoming people with open arms. And when you don't know us from the outside, maybe there's some mystery, but inside is just like friends having fun.
What kind of impact has the cult had on the broader crypto art movement?
How would I know? I'm in the eye of the hurricane. I have no idea. I think it's kind of having like a very slow underground growth. I would think it's more like the mycelium, growing. So you don't really see it. It's not spectacular, but it's all happening under the ground and you don't see it. But maybe at some point it's going to blow up. I don't know. I think for anyone in Lisbon now, it's kind of maybe not a household name, but we're doing stuff like DJ sets, parties, whatever. I think it's growing. It has a few fans too. And it's hard to gauge the real outreach of that. But I think it's having an impact on culture in a way. I've seen a few artists make cult logos and they were even part of the actual cult. So, when you have this kind of fan base even outside of the core, I think it's a good sign.
So let's dive a bit deeper into your own art. You have created a series of works that you refer to as blockchain mythology. What is significant about this body of work?
So it was not designed from the beginning as a common thread between these pieces. It's just like doing work, especially one-off-ones, one after the other, without having a common thread, actually. Just every piece was a new concept, a new thing I wanted to explore. But then after some time, you look back on it and then you realize you're like, oh, yeah, it's close to the definition I was trying to give about crypto art, right? So mythology, because we're in a new territory with blockchains and the digital world, we're getting used to it, but there are some things still, I find them weird or still amazing and underrated in a way. I think we've digested it very quickly for some things. And if you take a step back, you're going to think like it's absurd or it's magic or, this kind of reaction, like we take it for granted and it's not like that. So I think there's a kind of need to address this as a kind of myth because we're in a time of creation, basically. And so that's where the idea of looking at it as if it's a foundational mythological period is a good way to look at it for me. So yeah, you've seen in the work, you have works on memes like stuff with Pepe, exploring what it means to burn a token and lose it forever. So there's this concept of loss on the blockchain that is very specific with the burn address. So this wallet address no one will ever have access to, that has millions of dollars in it, lots of great art, incredibly valuable stuff. And you can look at it, you can explore it. It's huge. And still you can't touch it. I think it's very fascinating and it makes me think it could be like a history from ancient Greece, right? This kind of mythical treasure chest that you can open, you can't touch it. It's very much like Pandora's box, or I can't remember the name of the guy who is sitting at this huge banquet table and they can look at the food, but they can't touch it. It's this same kind of very strong symbolism. And so like that, I think there are lots of things we don't need to, but it's very interesting to explore.
And crypto art sometimes challenges the way we value the work of artists. Could you tell us about your piece, The Last Hammer, and how it relates to the concept of value?
It's a piece that wasn't well received by everyone. I think it's interesting because there's a real stake for me. So I'm going to try to sum it up. Basically, it's a piece, if you buy it, my career is over. So 20 plus years of work, of networking, exhibiting all over the world, even in space, all that, it's finished. And it's because we're in an over-speculated part of the art market. Maybe not over. I think maybe the art market in some ways can be like that too. The traditional one, I mean. And there's also this confusing thing about putting a value not on the art, but only on the name of the artist. So it's just like you're taking a stake in their career, hope it goes up. And with that mindset, any work can do it. You don't even have to like it or to understand it. You can just buy anything and it's almost like a fungible token. And so with that in mind, the artwork is priced at roughly, I think it's 6 or 7 million euros, something like that. And the price is calculated on how much I would need if I stopped working now to have a normal salary counting inflation and taxes to reach the end of my life without working. So it's basically the price of being an artist until you die. So the average death for a French guy now is like maybe 80 years old. So that was what I took into account. And the price is based like that. So of course, it's ridiculously high. And if I was ex-copy, it would be sold already. It would be terrible. But because I'm not there, it's not going to happen, right? It would be very surprising. But still, it's not neutral for me. It's not like, it doesn't exist. I just did it for the love. Or it's really, when I think about it, I still have this emotion in my stomach, like, oh fuck, I actually don't want to sell it. I want to continue. I don't want to stop doing what I love doing. When you make conceptual art, most of the time it's going to be very intellectual and in a way sometimes emotionless or very dry. And to me, being able to do a conceptual piece that's very like, well, you've seen it, like the aesthetics, it's basically a placeholder, right? It's just a title and a concept for me. And the fact that I could make something very conceptual that has such like a strong emotional impact and stake, for me, it was very interesting because it's not easy to find something that does that. And a few artists actually hated it, like Angie Taylor. I love her. We're in good terms and everything. But when she saw it, she was like, are you selling your soul? Artists should respect themselves. And of course, I get it. I knew some people would react like that. And I was like, first, I don't think I'm ever going to sell it. But that's what makes the artwork interesting, because there's a stake, and it's also work that is not just about the value of being an artist and making art and devoting your life to that. It's also an artwork about the imbalance of power between collector and artist, which is very much in favor of the collector all the time because they have the money. And so almost giving them the gun and saying, it's okay, you can kill my career right now. I'm giving you the gun. There's one bullet in it. It's your choice now. I think it's very interesting because you can abuse this power. And there's also this mechanic. You can buy it, but if you burn the token, then the decision is reversed. The collector has like spent millions of dollars for nothing, basically, or maybe just a publicity stunt. I don't know. But then I'm free and I can do art again. So there's also this, and it gives way too much power to the collector. And that's actually the point of the piece. So we're having this conversation. That means the work is happening. It's not about being collected. It's more about having this right now. So it's a success.
Absolutely. It's a consequential work of art. NFT collectors all want their bags to moon, but you actually sent a group of artworks into space. Can you tell us about what was involved in that project?
So I was working with Sharona Cohen. She has this startup called Dreamy. And the point of the startup was to illustrate people's dream. And so you had this very cool service of people coming with a dream, either literal or figuratively. And they would choose an artist, and the artist would make an artwork based on that. So we did that for years and became friends. And at some point, she was like, oh, I have this idea, the big dream. And it's about having a lot of people sharing their dreams with us and having a huge artwork made out of it, like a kind of collective consciousness of dreams. And so at some point, she was like, I want to do the big dream, but like have thousands and thousands of people all over the world send their dream for how they imagine the world in 2030 from many very different places in the world. And we would have a lot of artists make a lot of artwork and somehow combine all of them to exhibit them everywhere. And so I took on the role of art director, artist liaison, and also participating artist and everything in this project. So it was years of work. It was very intense. And so I managed to recruit a lot of artists with very different backgrounds, techniques, and everything. Managed to have half women and half men. I'm very, very proud of that. And so we did the work, like 500 pieces of art with a huge Excel file with thousands and thousands of dreams sent by kids in Japan, adults in New York, whatever, and you browse it like a library of consciousness, and you find very wholesome stuff about how there is peace because my country is at war. Some of them were gut-wrenching. There's someone we tried to find again because it was just beautiful. It was a woman in Portugal, I think, and she said, I have a lung cancer, and I'm just dreaming about my lung opening like a rose and healing. And that was just it. And we're just like, oh, it was so humbling to have these people share that kind of stuff with us. These are real people. It's the real world. It's our planet. It's the people who live on it. And you had very out there dreams too. Like, I want to be able to talk to my dog and this kind of stuff. That was really funny. So basically you have all that, 500 pieces of art. And I patched them together in one big artwork, and we made collages and video work based on that. And we exhibited it in like, I don't know how many countries. So huge screens on Times Square, Melbourne in Australia, in France, in Norway, printed as a flag going to the top of a mountain in Nepal and on the Kilimanjaro. And at some point, she says, I think I already told you about that, but the idea of going to the ISS is going well. And I was like, what? You mean the International Space Station in space? And she was like, yeah, I found an astronaut and he's okay to bring the art to space. And I was like, what? No, you didn't tell me. And so let's go back with a spooky story. Around 10 years prior to that, I have a twin sister, and she was like, I want to see a psychic. I heard she was really good and the quintessential psychic living in the woods of the grid in the countryside, So she's like, do you want to come with me? I'm like, yeah, I'm not really sure I'm into it, but it's going to be fun. And it's a good idea to just go on a road trip with my sister. So we just go there, both of us. And of course, I book a session because I'm not going to go there just to wait. And I go there and it's my turn. And she's like, I see stars, I see space. Does it ring a bell? Does it mean something to you? I was like, yeah, I'm dreaming a lot about space, but I don't know why. It's just there, I don't know what to make of it. And she's like, yeah, I see also like very human technology. It's like human structures in space and you're negotiating between groups of people. And I'm like, okay. I was like, maybe I'm going to be an interpreter of Japanese between JAXA and NASA. I was trying to imagine how it could ever happen that I will have something to do with space. And like, nah, not going to happen. I completely forgot about it for 10 years, just out of my mind. And so we started on the project. And at some point, we're in contact with NASA. And they were trying to make us respect like very, very tight deadlines. I was like, I have 60 artists, it's not possible. Can we have one more week at least to finish the works? And so it was a bit hard negotiating that. And all of a sudden, it came back to me. I was like, I'm negotiating between people about something in space. And I don't know, my mind was just like, it happened out of all possibilities, I don't know what to make of it, but it's part of the story now. So basically, we had a printed flag with a patchwork of all the pieces and also a video with all the works chained together. And it was displayed on a laptop in 0G and the flag also floating in 0G. And at some point, the astronaut took the camera and looked at the window and you could see the Earth behind it. And I was just like, man, it's something. It's really something. It was a great adventure and definitely something I will never forget.
It's an amazing tale and surprisingly meaningful as well. So thank you so much for walking us back through that.
Which works of art do you view as an essential part of the story of crypto art?
So I found about NFTs at the end of 2020, roughly. And when I tried to understand what it was, I obviously Googled stuff like what is crypto art? Where is it? And I found a list like the top crypto art platforms. And the top two names were Super Rare and Async Art. So I applied to both of them in November 2020, I think, and was accepted by both of them. It was great. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I'm in. And so one of the first things I did in crypto art was having a look at Async Art, which was amazing because they were the first to really make available to artists no-code solutions to make dynamic artworks, programmable artworks that would change with the time of the day. Lots of really cool stuff happening there. And it was one of my favorite platforms. And their first work of art was something called The First Supper. Obviously a play on Da Vinci's The Last Supper. And it was a mix of many people you would know today. Obviously, the most well-known would be Xcopy. And then I think there is Goldie too. Alotamani, obviously, and people like that, all making little bits of the picture, like characters behind the huge table of the supper. And it was a collective artwork. And it was this very strange mix collage of very, very different styles. And the fact that it was dynamic, you were like, wait, so if you connect that, you can change it. So it's actually a collective piece of art because different people own a different part of the picture. And if they want something specific to happen, like globally, they would actually need to talk to each other and agree on what to do, each of them, to have a specific result. And that was mind-blowing. And I think at the time it was one of the most innovative pieces too, because in some ways, Async Art was created to make that piece happen. Not just for that, because they knew that doing that, they could make it available for other people to play with it. But it started with that. And yeah, to me, it's one of the most foundational pieces of crypto art. After that, you discover the history, rare pepes, all that stuff, some collectibles no one cares about anymore, like CryptoKitties and stuff like that. Obviously, CryptoPunks, they're supposed to be collectibles. Some people argue they're works of art. I disagree, but I think they're very important cultural artifacts. Maybe not a work of art, even if it was very experimental at the time, but I don't know. Maybe it's not that important to know if it's art or not. I would probably have to add more recent stuff because there's been very amazing works closer to us, but I think we need some hindsight. It's still too new. And also, is it just about innovation? What is the lasting impression you're going to have on it? Can you really detach yourself from the price action? All these kind of confusing questions about it. It makes it difficult. So maybe I will have more recent pieces, but like in a few years.
Yeah, we'll do another call in, a few years, and then I'll ask you this question again. What excites you about the future of crypto art?
So the past few years, I've been working on more interactive stuff, and I think it's still very undervalued, except for a very niche part of the market. What you can do as a piece of art, the fact that it's living on a blockchain, and so you have this distributed solidity to it, and also malleability because you can play with it and make it do something else than just be a work of art. I think this is going to continue to develop, and people are going to have great ideas. For example, one of my biggest series is going to be released in a couple of months, I think. And I was sitting with a friend who was actually part of the async art team, Afro Viking, if you know him. Great guy. And we were sitting in a cafe in Paris and just had time to kill. And we started to talk about auctions and stuff like that. And ended up as, wouldn't it be fun if we could do something where I don't want to spoil it, okay? Stay tuned. But basically, we had this idea, and I was like, it's so simple, meaningful. How come no one has done it yet? You would think after a few years, most of the fundamental ideas would be done in a fruitful way. And no, there's still stuff floating around that is maybe not the most complex or the most original, but very meaningful. And people still haven't done it yet. So that kind of stuff, I think it's exciting and hopefully gets more covered as we go.
Leaving us with some things to look forward to. Jean, by weaving mythology, surrealism, and dynamic elements into your art, you invite us to see crypto not just as technology, but as a living and evolving culture. Thank you for joining us to share your story with us today.
Thanks to both of you. It was great. And I hope in a few years we'll have another conversation.
The story of crypto art is still being written. Thanks for joining us as we talk to those at the heart of this movement.